Hello, and welcome to Jolene Knits a Lot. This is my show about knitting and other crafts that I've been getting up to. My setup once again looks different because technical difficulties, but I'm glad you could join me today for a little knitting and crafting time. How are you doing? Have you been watching all of the Olympic sports? Are you, like the people in my household now, complete experts in sports they only watch every 4 years? We've been really enjoying watching Olympic coverage. We've enjoyed watching the Canadians do well in various sports. It's been an odd Olympics, I think, because oftentimes there are medal hopefuls or people that they think are going to do well, and this year I think it's been very unexpected, because up until even the opening ceremonies, I think a lot of people weren't sure the Olympics were actually going to happen. So I think it's amazing for all those people who are Olympic athletes, who are families and friends of Olympic athletes, or just supporting their teams, and watching these people try and do their best in a very stressful situation. Yeah, it's been really enjoyable, but the Olympics are almost over, and so I'm gonna have to find something else to entertain me while I knit. Speaking of knitting, I have a couple finished objects to share with you today. One of them is in fact inspired by the Olympics, mostly inspired by Tom Daley, who I'm sure, if you are involved in social media at all, you may know that Tom Daley is a British diver who knits, and he's been seen knitting in the stands of the Olympics, and he's been knitting various different things. And one of the things he knit was some dog sweaters. So you know that I was going to get on board that train. This is the Jono Dog Sweater, and it's a free pattern online. I will link it below. It was super easy to whip up. I knit it in, it calls for a chunky weight, I think, and I used Cascade Eco, which I have lying around my stash, and I knit this up in one day. I cast on 4 more stitches than the pattern called for, mostly because my dog Blue is a corgi, and corgis tend to be quite broad through the chest, especially as they grow, and I didn't want this to be something that Blue couldn't really wear as he grows more, and he will definitely be a bigger dog by fall and when it's cooler weather out. So I cast on 4 more stitches than the pattern calls for, and then you work just a few rounds just in knitting, and then you do a bit of rib, and then you do some increases. These increases match the breastbone of the dog, and then a couple of little leg openings, which I know Tom Daley, by observing his knitting, did some ribbing around these leg holes. I didn't bother, mostly because Blue's legs are short. He's a low rider, so I really didn't see the need to do that. And then you knit a few rounds, and because Blue has a longer body, I knit 15 rounds here, and I did fewer decreases because corgis' bodies tend to be quite tubular, or even barrel shaped. So I didn't want to decrease too much. So I think I only did 2 decrease rounds. The decrease rounds were supposed to be every other round, just like the increases. But I chose to do, so you can see 1 decrease round right here, and then I did 3 rounds of just plain knitting, and then I did another decrease round, and then I worked a few short rows to extend the back or the bum area a little bit further so that it would sit nicely over his rump, and not be too long underneath, because Blue is a boy, and so I didn't want him peeing on this sweater that I made him. So that's the Jono Dog Sweater. It was a super easy knit. It was very relaxing. And if you have a dog in your life, particularly a smaller dog, I might recommend it. I'll show you some pictures of Blue here. It was kind of tricky to get pictures of Blue in this sweater, partly because he's never worn clothes before, and so mostly he just tried to chew it or chase his tail. So he wasn't a huge fan, but I think he kind of got used to it enough so that we could get some photos of him looking very regal in his new sweater. I could see myself knitting more things for Blue, partly because like this sweater was a super quick knit and it was fun to do, but I think I'm going to hold off until I know if he'll actually tolerate wearing them. So maybe later in the fall we'll see if sweaters become something that Blue wears. Anyway, the Juno Dog Sweater, knit in Cascade Eco. I use 6.5mm needles and really enjoyed knitting that. So I'd recommend it if I would recommend it if you have dogs in your life, but also I recommend the yarn. It's really soft. Yeah, surprisingly nice. It'll be interesting to see if it pills a lot with him wearing it or if he gnaws at it a bit, but not to be outdone by Olympic knitters. I thought I would take part. So there you have it. I also managed in the last couple of weeks to finish my Tuku Honey Socks. So these again are a pattern by Andrew Mowry. I knit them in Tuku fingering, and these socks are still quite phallic looking, in my opinion, but I think that on the foot they'll be quite nice, and I will insert some modeled pictures here. They're a really fun knit. For me it was good because I was doing some techniques that I don't usually do. I don't usually do magic loop knitting, but I did for these socks. I don't usually do a almost entirely purled sock, so that was new. I don't normally knit socks from the toe up, so I did a different cast on, and there was a lot more increasing instead of decreasing. It was a new to me heel, which is a lot like the heel turn that you might do in a heel flap and gusset, but it just looks a little bit different because it's oriented in the opposite direction. So yeah, these socks were fun because there was a lot of new things for me, and I really enjoyed knitting them. I finished both of them, and I will insert my yardage and my stash dash goals here for my stash dash totals. I've been moving along quite nicely with my stash dashing, my stash dashing, my dashing. Anyway, yeah, making good progress, and it's been nice to work on little things, especially as the weather here has been kind of up and down, mostly pretty hot and kind of smoky, as we're dealing with the effects of some forest fires in British Columbia, which is the province just next to us. So today is kind of a smoky, hazy day, which makes for very moody lighting, as you can maybe see. I forgot to mention what I'm wearing today. Today I am wearing my cozy, classic, light sweater that I finished earlier this spring. It is knit in some Sheepy's Skies cotton, and it's a really great knit for a day like today when it's a little bit cooler, especially in the morning. The smoke makes the weather cooler for sure. It definitely blocks the heat of the sun, and so when it's a smoky day it's definitely cooler, and so this has been something nice to wear. So I've told you a little bit about my finished objects. How about what I'm working on? I think you might remember that I cast on another outline tank. Here's where I'm at with it. It's kind of hard to show. I finished knitting the body of this tank top. This is the mauve colorway, and I am using Kelborn Woolen's Mojave yarn, which is a cotton and linen blend. I really like the tank top that I made out of this yarn already, which was also an outline tank. In fact, I wore it yesterday, and so I thought I would make myself another tank top, because good tank tops for me I find are are hard to find. I find they're hard to find. That made no sense. Anyway, so I decided to make another one, a different color. This is mauve, which I think is quite a lovely color. So I finished the body, and you'll remember that those dropped, or the sort of open work details come at the end when you drop some stitches all the way down to the ribbing. So I finished the body, and I did some decreases on the front, which go right across to the other side of the front, and then I started up one of the cups or the triangles on the tank top. So I've just started the first one, but I'm making good progress, and I'm dropping stitches unintentionally and not part of that open work pattern. Hang on, I'll catch you. There we go. So by the time you get to the triangles of this pattern, there's really not a lot left to do, and I think that I should have this tank top finished for the heat wave we're expecting at the end of next week. So fingers crossed, I will have a new tank top for hot weather to come in August. So you can see the triangle forming, and then there will be some drop stitches at the very end. So that's my second outline tank. Again, I'm using the same yarn that I used the first time because I liked it so much the first time. And I have about this much, I have exactly this much yarn left to finish the two triangles, the straps, and it should be more than enough. I should have a few grams left over. And that's my outline tank. What else have I been working on? Aha. Sorry about that. I have been working on some cross stitch. So let me show you. When last we saw this cross stitch project, you may remember that you are UGG, but now you are Ina. This is another kit that I got from Junebug and Darlin. Their kits are really well laid out. They provide you with everything that you need. I find them very well organized. The instructions are very clear. So this is a much larger hoop anyway than the last one that I did. And you may be able to see that I have finished all the letters, so that's pretty exciting. And I've done all of the little green leaves. I think I did the green leaves because, for a couple of reasons. There was quite a bit of the green, and so I kind of wanted to get that out of the way. And once the green little leaves are sort of in place, it'll make it easier for me to just set the flowers in. So there'll be little flowers that fit in here, kind of filling in these spaces in, I think, 4 or 5 maybe different colors. And so that the flowers, I think, will be a nice thing to do. Like I could sit down and just cross stitch a flower and then put it aside and then do another one. So I'm really enjoying the cross stitch, which was, I think, a bit of a surprise to me. Partly because cross stitch does require a bit more attention to detail. You have to do a lot of counting because all of these little X's just happen on a plain blank piece of fabric. So you really do have to pay attention to a chart and where you're putting those stitches and the colors that you're using. So it does take a little bit more focus, but so I wasn't sure that I would want something where I had to pay a lot more attention, but I found it quite relaxing. So that was a bit of a surprise and a bit of a happy surprise. So I'll just keep working on this in the evenings on occasion, and it'll be finished when it's finished. I don't have a big plan for it. There's no rush. It's not meant for any occasion or for any, I don't have a place even in mind to hang it. So I'll just keep working on it and it'll be finished when it's finished. Now, for some reason, August, which it now is always a time when I start thinking about back to school and fall. Do we ever really grow out of that back to school feeling? Like September, at least here, September is when all the kids go back to school, and that's when it feels like fall because school is starting, and there's always this desire to get more stationery products and new fall clothes. And so I've been looking at fall trends, which I don't know if I've sort of fallen out of the habit of following fashion trends or like what's new and cool for the fall. I mean, I used to do that when I was younger or more, maybe had more disposable income or had more time to think about those things. But I'm sort of come to the conclusion that I'm more of a classic wardrobe kind of person. I like pretty classic pieces. I don't necessarily think that I follow trends so much anymore. However, having said that, one of the trends that I saw on these trend watch lists was for the color lilac and also for sweater vests. And that got me thinking, why don't I just whip up a sweater vest? They're trendy, and I do enjoy vests, and I don't have any at this time, at least sweater vests. So I thought, all right, let's check the stash. But first, let's check Ravelry for some reasonable patterns that might suit the bill. So I came up with the Stockholm Slipover. This is a pattern by Petite Knits. She has lovely patterns, lovely, very simple, classic patterns. If you're looking for a simple sweater, I would totally recommend checking out her catalog on of patterns, which are growing all the time. I also would recommend Tin Can Knits for some very classic and understated patterns. Sorry, I was interrupted by a puppy. So, lilac sweater vests got me thinking. And so the Petite Knits Stockholm pullover is a pattern that calls for worsted weight yarn. So I went to check my stash to see what I had, and I had 2 balls of Brooklyn Tweed Loft in the Blanket Fort colorway that I have been hanging on to for years with nothing really in mind. But of course, it's not enough fingering weight really for a lot of projects. So I thought I would hold it double with this also fingering weight yarn. This is the Gathering Yarns One Shot. Let me see. I'm terrible if I didn't have. Aha! Yay! Gathering Yarns. The harvest is here. This is the yarn that I used as the main color for my mom's flea cardigan that I knit for Mother's Day. This is the oatmeal color. It's also a fingering. It's kind of a light fingering. It's very rustic. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold these 2 yarns together for sort of a marled, lilac-y, gray kind of effect. And I think that that will be quite nice. And I also think that I have enough yarn to do a whole vest. So that's sort of the marled-y kind of look we'll be getting. So I think that'll be kind of nice. Comments, concerns? Do your puppies bark when you're trying to podcast? So I often find that there are times in my knitting where I'm like, okay, I want to make this pattern, and then I'm going to make this pattern, and then I'm going to make this pattern. It's very clear to me what my plans are for my crafting. And sometimes I am just pulled in whatever direction seems to grab me, and so some days I will just knit up a dog sweater out of the blue. And now I'm feeling like knitting a lilac sweater vest out of the blue, and that's okay. That's the great thing about crafting, is you can totally do what you want, and you can make your own clothes that you think you'll wear, and you can put off finishing a pavement sweater, which will also be highly wearable and delightful because it's just not calling to you at this moment. So there. And that's my knitting plans for right now. I would like to finish that tank top while it's still hot. I'd like to start working on a sweater vest for fall. And I'd like to keep working on my cross-stitch patterns, and then we'll see where life goes from there. In about 1 month from now, on September 11th and 12th, there is the Prairie Fiber Festival, which is held in Lacombe, and I will be teaching a colorwork class Saturday morning from 9 till 12. So once I sort of have a couple things, not tied up, but once I have some time and some brain space, I plan on casting on some color work as sort of an inspiration and preparation for getting ready to teach some color work, and also because I just really like reading color work. So those are my plans for the next little while. I hope that you're enjoying your summer. I hope that life is treating you well at this time of year. I hope you're finding some time to rest and to do the things that you like to do that fill your cup. So I hope that in the next couple weeks you find time to walk your dog. Hi. Hey, don't bite my chair. Don't bite my chair. I hope that you find time to do the things that you like to do. I know I plan on knitting a lot. Goodbye from me and Blue. See you next time.